The balance breakdown is back in your life. It's time to put some balance in your life. And we're going to discuss UFC Singapore, which happened this past weekend in the wee hours of the morning in Canada, a little bit earlier for Harry. He has thoughts, he has notes, and he's going to share them with me and the rest of us gladly over the next hour or so on this card. Harry, good sir, how are you on this fine day? I hope you're well. And how did you find this card?
All good, thank you. Pleasure to be here as always. I really enjoyed the card. I mean, there are obviously some fights that coming in to the card we weren't super hyped on. And I think there was at least one of those that I left not being super hyped on. But at least, you know, the heavyweight fights that we had in the middle could have been horrific. Like, it could have been big meaty men doing big meaty things, but both finished very, very quickly. And so, you know, that's really in modern day MMA, what we're looking for when you book heavyweight fighters outside of the top 5 is we're looking for a first round finish, right? Like, that's really both from the promotional standpoint and from a fan standpoint, we're looking for somebody to get knocked the fuck out inside of 5 minutes. And
it's funny, like that definition of a heavyweight fight where you could have like the definition of I mean, not trying to get too excitable here, but a great heavyweight fight, you know, a first round knockout. But in the same sentence, it could turn into a horrific fight if it goes longer than the first and second rounds. And you see guys with hands under hips or bending over and hands under knees and stuff like that. I think as far as outside of the rankings heavyweight, I think, yeah, you're right. We were fairly blessed on Saturday with the way things happened.
1,000,000%. Yeah, 1,000,000%. And I think even we could probably push a little higher up the chain than ranked, right? Like, I think top 8. If you're looking at a top 8
fight, he's trying to be polite there. It's Slim Pickens a heavyweight, man.
It's rough enough, but yeah, I mean, the main card outside of Smith Spann delivered drastically for me. The Smith performance, I mean, we learned that he was tough. We didn't need to know that he was tough any more than we already knew he was tough, right? I think Blanchfield earned a number 1 contendership fight, and we'll talk about that. I think she's earned a title shot. That was a number 1 contendership fight, and we'll talk about that. I thought Kazama Armfield, fantastic fight. Nakamura was absolutely unbelievable. Billy Goff, obviously, got my severe spotlight this week, and I thought his performance was absolutely fantastic. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed the card. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a decent card. I was all kinds of fucked up watching this card. I got up in the middle of the night, half fell asleep, half was watching it, and then I got through the main card. It was fine, and I got to like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was like, am I awake? Have I been awake for 52 hours now? Because it's just, my body clock was all over the shop. But we got there, and we got to witness the spectacle that was the main event. That was Max Holloway and Korean Zombie. And the fight kind of went quite about as much as we kind of expected it to go, Harry, in how it finished. And that was Max Holloway getting out the Korean Zombie in the 3rd round with a nice right hook over the top. When you're looking at this fight, Harry, and how it played out, like I said, nothing too real surprising about this. The result, or possibly, I think the only surprise was maybe Korean Zombie probably did a little bit better at stages than we were expecting to, and kind of drew Max Holloway into that kind of war that he does so well against his opponents. But ultimately, the writing was on the wall. The fight could have been over in round 2. Ultimately, it finished in round 3 with that right hook over the top. And yeah, just kind of maybe share your thoughts on how the fight progressed and what you seen, and was it what you were expecting, or did you see anything that you were not expecting to see?
So I think immediately, like, you know, Zombie has sort of rumored or dropped hints that this was going to be his last fight, dependent on his performance, right? But as soon as the walkout started, you're like, oh, okay, he's retiring. Like fine, he's retiring. And so that slightly changed my opinion of the fight in of itself. As soon as he started to walk out and you could feel him soaking in the energy of the moment, soaking in the emotion of the crowd, and really allowing himself to feel the emotion of the moment, it was obvious that he was just going to go out there and give absolutely everything. Like, it wasn't going to be a fight to try to win technically. It wasn't going to be a fight to go out and try and earn a higher spot in a ranking or put yourself in a position for another bigger fight. Like, this was the last one. And so he was absolutely going to go out on his shield or home with it. And he epitomized that in the fight, right? I think Max Holloway got hit way more than he wanted to. I think Max Holloway was forced into situations he didn't want to be in. Max Holloway had to ramp up the gears far faster than Max Holloway usually likes to ramp up the gears. But in
one real question, I would actually question Max Holloway's want to up the gear at all in that fight, based off a pure level of respect, Harry. That's the way I looked at it. But as the fight progressed, like you said, he was kind of forced. His hand was forced a little bit by Korean Zombie in his forward movement. And the fact that he was actually nailing Max Holloway with some pretty good and powerful shots as well, which, as you were probably trying to work towards there, that's why Max Holloway had to turn up the gas a little bit sooner than he probably was expecting to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Max's intentions was shown immediately from how the fight started, right? I think he wanted to go in and have a clean, cut and dry performance where he didn't have to put a beating on Korean Zombie, right? He wanted to go out there, and we saw that again in the second round. He dropped Zombie, and immediately his hands go up. He doesn't want to land anything else. He doesn't want to do anything else.
Didn't want to do any damage.
And then as referee Mark Goddard chooses not to step in because Zombie is building up to a turtle, Max doesn't opt to take his back, from a wrestling perspective, and start landing ground and pound. Instead, he opts for a DOS, right? That tells you everything you need to know. He could have easily landed big hooks from the top, and Zombie would have been definitely out of there, but he tried to save him the damage, and he tried to choke him instead. Zombie, obviously, tough as ever, doesn't want to go out like that. And so he gutted the DOS. Fair play to him, no problem. But you could see that as he goes back, Max is sort of thinking to himself, like, come on, dude. Like, come on. Now I need to put you away. Like, I actually need to put you away.
In that moment in the second round where we had that instance where Max did drop him, refused to kind of lay, and we were talking about probably one or two hammer fists would have done it there in that stage. That's what I was looking at, and not this might sound a little outrageous, but could the ref come in there and help things out, in your opinion? I mean, no. I understand why he didn't, but like he saw what all the rest of us seen in that situation, though, didn't he? You would like to think he would have had the best view where, you know, you're teetering. And look at Mac. Goddard has come under criticism for some of his stoppages recently. Maybe that was on the back of his mind. You say no. Why would you say no? I would kind of probably say no as well, but I just wanted to bring up the conversation.
Because Zombie dropped, and it didn't, now again, we don't have the best angle to see, but his eyes didn't seem like they glazed. His eyes didn't seem like they rolled back into his head. It looked like he took a good shot. He got dropped, but immediately started moving. It wasn't like it took him half a second or whatever. As Max saw him go down and lifted his hands up, Zombie immediately started to turn up to his knees. Well, that's intelligent defense, right? Intelligent defense is getting back to your feet. And Goddard can't stop it, you know? Like, that's the rules he is adjudicating under. If he stops it, people are going to go fucking mental for taking it away from Zombie, right? If he doesn't stop it, people are going to be like, oh, well, sure, we saw what happened in the end, so why not stop it there, right? Like, it's a tough situation in hindsight, because as he walks out, we understand it's his retirement fight. But Mark Goddard can't think about that. Like, Mark Goddard has to adjudicate specifically under the rules that he has, and he did that. I feel like Zombie took a big shot. We've seen him take a big shot before. We saw him take big shots in round one, right? And okay, he got knocked down, fine. We can't stop fights because we know it's his retirement, right? I think what we saw in round 3 was unfortunate in that Zombie had realized at the end of round 1, I think, that he wasn't going to be able to win technically. He then went out in round 2 and really tried to put it on Max Holloway, and obviously got dropped and almost finished with a DAS. Round 3 was the biggest, I'm either getting finished in these 5 minutes or I'm finishing somebody. And that was the epitome of zombie and one of the reasons why we love him, but also quite sad to see, right? Because that's at that level, you're essentially asking to be finished. Max Holloway, a guy that's never been dropped, claims to have only ever been rocked once, and that's against Andre Fili. And then you're going out there and being like, well, it didn't work in the first two, so let me just literally leave myself open for shots and swing hell for leather. And in a way, that's sad to see, because that's Korean Zombie.
Yeah, but would it be more sad if he just stood on the outside and just got picked apart for another three rounds solid? Maybe he saved himself in the long run. So I'd like with Korean Zombie at night. Let's try and keep it as positive as we can for the good memories that we had, rather than maybe focus on the sadness of this situation. Definitely for this one, I would feel Korean Zombie and his style, obviously not too friendly towards himself, but definitely fan friendly. And that particular style that he chose to produce obviously didn't work against Max Holloway in that style of fight against an elite level competition. But it was a style that he did use throughout his career that brought him some success and brought him a lot of love and adoration from the fans that were watching on Saturday night, and some other ones that were watching throughout his career.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And whilst it's sad for me, I think it's almost the perfect way for Zombie to go out, right? Under the adoration and adulation of the fans. He wouldn't have wanted to go out any other way. He wouldn't have wanted to go out standing on the outside, circling, looking to land counter shots like he was at the start of round one. He wanted to go out knowing that he gave everything at the last moment. And he did, right? We can't take anything away from him. And I think one of the beautiful moments was as he left the cage and everyone was on their feet. People hadn't left the arena, right? They were there. They were there for him. They were there to say goodbye to him. And I think that alone was a beautiful moment, because we don't get to see those.
I was teary-eyed and shit watching that, man. It was like
100%.
that's and showing my fight age now. I get like upset watching that, and I wasn't. Sometimes you're watching this stuff, and who was the last one? Robbie Lawler. Yeah, Robbie Lawler was the same. I didn't get as upset, strangely enough, though, as I did watching Korean Zombie. Maybe as you said, it was the way he went out. He didn't get the win, and he was knocked out. But I thought it was also a product of the UFC production staff, and they gave him that moment, and the crew gave him that moment too. And sometimes silence is bliss. We give out a lot about the booth and what they say and what they do and how they carry themselves, but I thought that the whole UFC crew and production team handled themselves with excellence in this occasion, and giving Korean Zombie his moment after the fight, and obviously to say his bit to the crowd, but also just staying with him and letting us and allowing us share his moment as well, as he was able to do it with his family as well and the rest of his fans. I just thought it was really good to see that.
For sure. And the other thing I loved about it, right, was now Korean Zombie can go back and he can watch that fight, and he gets to watch the whole procession. That was one thing I loved about it, is not only was there silence from the booth, and as you say, that the camera stayed with him, because now you get to watch Max celebrate him specifically at the very, very start of his post-fight interview. You then get to watch the fans. They did a great job of, as Korean Zombie wasn't talking or Max was talking, they panned to the camera around the audience, and people were shouting for him and some people were teary and whatever. When he's talking, they just did a great job of nailing it, almost like an archival situation for him. So if he does want to go back and he does want to remember the moment and share the moment with future grandchildren or whatever, then he actually has an archive in the UFC.
He and his family will produce, still have a good time in watching that back, won't they?
Indeed.
When we're talking about next steps, obviously we've just went in great detail about Korean Zombie's next steps. What are we going to do with Max Holloway? Because that seems like a completely different predicament altogether, and the situation that he's in right now, currently standing at 0-3 against the champion Alexander Volkanovski, 18-0 against all other competition within the featherweight division. It's a real predicament about what's next, and we do talk about what's next, and I feel that this could even be a podcast in its own right when we're talking about Max Holloway and what we want to see for him next. What do you want to see for Max Holloway next, Harry?
So I think if I'm Max Holloway, I take a little bit of time off, not because he took any damage or anything like that, but clearly the weight of the situation in Hawaii is looming large on his shoulders. And I thought, to me, he actually performed worse with that on his shoulders than usual. Like, I'm not going to read too much into it. Korean Zombie made it a very, very difficult fight for him. Made it so Max wasn't able to do the Max things, right? And he had to really, as I say, ramp up the gears very, very, very quickly, whereas he's not usually used to doing that or doesn't like to do that. Usually likes to get his reads and pick his spots. And then by the end of, rounds 2 and rounds 3, he's almost in full Max force. I think, firstly, go and deal with that. Be as large in your community and as helpful in your community as possible. There are some things that are far greater than fighting, right? And that's certainly one of them. And I think then just watch to see what happens with the shakeout in that title fight that's probably going to be happening between Ilia Topuria and Alexander Volkanovski. Because if Ilia Topuria wins, you've either got a shout immediately or they're likely to do an immediate rematch. Right? Now, if they do an immediate rematch, you're probably going to need to take a fight against whoever it is, right? Pick somebody. I think if we don't know also what Alexander Volkanovski is going to do here, right? He's talking about Aljo, he's talking about Sean O'Malley, he's talking about he's talking about Islam again. Like, who knows what's going to happen there? But just as an outside throw, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Max has said he wants to fight for 6 years more, right? He said he walks around at like 160 pounds, which, isn't big at all for a featherweight fighter. Does he do the thing that we've been calling him to do for so long now? And it's take a year, get yourself in 155 pound shape and go in there. Because we've been talking for so long about this position that Max Holloway is in and is going to continue to be in. Because I'm not sure that Ilia Topuria beats Alexander Volkanovski. And even if he does, I'm not sure he beats him in a rematch. And so if Alexander then wants to go off and fight Islam, that's potentially 18 months that Max Holloway is not fighting for a UFC featherweight title, at least. Is now the time that he goes and he says, okay, let me go and have some amazing styles matchups at 155.
155 has always been, I wanted Max to go there for the longest time, right? But like you mentioned, his walk around weight, which is 160, which is far too light for that. So maybe the middle ground here that we need to follow is that maybe you take some time off and you start bulking up a little bit and you get yourself to a good, and your body in good shape to kind of go and tackle that 155 pound division. Fighting for 6 years sounds crazy to me for the amount of time that we've seen Max Holloway in there, and his mind and his spirit might want him to go for 6 years, but his body and his brain might not let him do that. Considering the amount of damage that he has taken and dished out in years as well. For me, I just want to see, like, in terms of getting the featherweight title back, there's no shame in losing the title to Alexander Volkanovski, and a great fighter like that too. He came damn close to even beating him. A lot of people will still argue that he won the second fight. Obviously, like, Max isn't going to want to listen to that, and that's not going to pay any dividends to him. But it's the conversation that he needs to have with himself. What does he want? What does he have left? And what does he want to achieve out of this sport of mixed martial arts? Or how much of himself does he want to give to the sport after probably giving away the majority of his body to the sport and his mind as well in however amount of years that he's been kind of doing it. So I like speaking about retirement and asking him to hang it up. I know it's completely ludicrous, and he's not going to want to do it, but I want to see him in kind of fun fights. I want to see them in these kind of fights with the likes of Korean Zombie. I'm genuinely not interested in another Max and Volkanovski fight. I just don't think it goes any different. I think, all right, maybe you wait around a little bit and you try and catch Volkanovski on the decline, but how much is Max Holloway going to decline in between that time as well? So That's why I think it's a real tricky conversation and one that we could have. I think his business is all but done at the featherweight division. I think you stop cutting weight. I think you bulk up somewhat to 155. You have a couple of fun fights up there if you want to. Throw him in there with the likes of Moicano, or throw him in there with the likes of, I don't know, Justin Gaethje, anyone. Like, I mean, there's tough fights up there too, Harry. There's tough fights up there too. I mean, but I don't know. It's a difficult one. He's really caught in a kind of a purgatory status within the 145 and 155 pound division with his weight, his body size, and the likely scenario is that he's going to remain at featherweight and stay taking out challengers and try and work his way back to a title shot. Will Max Holloway get there? Possibly. Will Volkanovski want to give him the opportunity? Possibly, but probably not. I think Volkanovski knows that he's probably coming towards the last quarter of his career, and he probably wants fresh, new challenges. I can maybe foresee Volkanovski moving up to 155, with Max maybe taking over down at 145 when he goes, but there's a lot of moving parts there, Harry, and I simply don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what Max Holloway decides to do, and I would imagine he'll take the rest of the year off, and we'll find out next year what it's going to be. But if I had a gun to my head, I think 145 he'll fight at next, and it'll be interesting to see who he goes up against.
Yeah, because like if I've just pulled up the rankings here, right? He's number one, fine. He's already fought Yair Rodriguez. Maybe you want to do that again, but I mean, it was relatively convincing in the end. Brian Ortega, nobody needs to see that again. He's already beaten Arnold Allen. Alia Topuria, that's the title shot, fine. I definitely don't need to see Josh Emmett fight Max Holloway. Calvin Kattar was one of the one-sided worst beatdowns we've seen in UFC history. He's just beaten the Korean Zombie. Giga Chikadze, I mean, that might be fun, but he's ranked 9, like. We then do Movsar Evloev.
We'll talk about Giga in a minute. I mean, if the Giga comes in that we seen on Saturday, Max wipes the floor with him. It's almost
sure.
Like
Movsar Evloev, that'd be a fun fight, but Max has got no business taking
Max
that.
destroys Evloev, in my opinion.
Right. Bryce Mitchell, again.
Destroys him.
Sadiq Youssef, who cares? Dan Ige, again, like that'd be a fun fight, but it's not a competitive fight, you know? Then we're like Edson Barbosa. I don't need to see that. Like, and then Alex Caceres. Again, I mean, that's just not even remotely close. And so
what do you think about next year early? We get Max Holloway versus Aljamain Sterling at 145 pounds.
Yeah, so this is the sort of auxiliary angle, right? Because if Aljo decides to move up, which obviously he's talked about doing before, but it seemed like the metric he needed to move up was to win the title, not lose it, right? Now Merab is talking about wants to win it, wants to do this. We know that the weight cut for Aljo is tough. We know that Aljo's in his 30s now, right? So that weight doesn't come off easy as you get older. I wonder whether for Aljo the time is to move up. If it is the time to move up and he goes in and he beats Max Holloway, well, that's a number one contender immediately, right? And so there's a lot of jeopardy in that sort of a matchup. I think from a stylistic matchup, it's fucking brilliant. Great fight. Love it. But again, let's say Max Holloway beats Aljamain Sterling. Then what? Yeah,
we're back to where we are here, and we're probably having that conversation again, aren't we? It's crazy. It'll be interesting. Like I said, like the outcome of this and what Max Holloway should do next year is a podcast that we could probably have out in our own right, Harry. We won't spend too much time. We've kind of discussed what we want for Holloway. I think if he was to stay at 145, a bit of fresh blood would be Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain did come out today and say, you know, he's more kind of forthcoming. I know he wanted to move up and challenge with the chance to become a double champion, but he came out and said today, you know, he wanted to give Merab his opportunity at a crack at the title, and you have to give him credit for that as well. And if he has that mentality and maintains that mentality, then a move up to 145 is probably the way to go. And why not stick him up there? Let's put him up there with Max Holloway. I think he's done enough within the 135-pound division to warrant a fight like that too. And it'll be interesting to see what happened on that. Let's move on to the co-main event, Harry. That was Ryan Spann versus Anthony Smith. And we weren't that warm on this fight before it happened. The fight happened, and I know I'm relatively cool on it, and I can imagine that you are too. It's just, when we do the breakdown show, Harry, it's like, we do the preview and we speculate about what we think is going to happen, and that's fun to do. I enjoy doing that, but I also like breaking down stuff that happened after the fact. And it was like, I like to get excited, but there was nothing to get excited about this. I mean, we had an Anthony Smith at the end of his career. I'm trying to be as polite as I fucking can here, if I'm being honest, right? And Anthony Smith, that's at the end of his career. We had a Ryan Spann that was coming in here with the opportunity to kind of, propel himself up the division in a light heavyweight. And what we had was just one guy who was not good enough against another guy who was way past it and way too tough for his own good, like you said earlier in the podcast. And the result was a split decision, a little bit. Like, how much less meaning that this fight has, Harry, is that this was a fucking controversial split decision and nobody was going up in arms about it on Twitter. That's how little people cared about this fight. And that's sad to say. Anthony Smith, who's given us many of an entertaining fight inside the octagon and is at the end of his career. But at this stage, it's like, what are we doing this for anymore? He's not going to get to a title. He's not even going to get close to a title shot. There'll be somebody else coming around the corner that's probably going to get him out of the way at the top of the 205 division. Ryan Spann just simply wasn't good enough or didn't show anywhere close to a level of fight IQ to get the job done on Saturday. And I mean, this was what way could I describe it? A lot of mediocrity. We kind of say middleweight mediocrity. This was kind of like heavyweight mediocrity, and it was kind of like our argument about Erin Blanchfield and Talia Santos, who we'll talk about again. Why wasn't that in this fucking spot? Like, why wasn't that there? Like, what are we doing? So that's my thoughts on this fight. The fight itself, I mean, they went in there, Harry, and they respected each other a lot more than they did in the first fight. It was a lot more hectic the first time around. This was a little bit more standoffish and maybe a lot more on the line for both of these fighters, and complimented Anthony Smith a little bit, although, some people will argue that Ryan Spann did enough to win the fight. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't argue either way. We're talking about a lot of close rounds here in this one. But your overall thoughts on the fight itself, and maybe if you want to go into the intricacies of the fight and what you did see as you were watching it.
So Anthony Smith, for the first round, did a good job of just basically replaying the tape from the first one, right? Just out-grappled Ryan Spann and did what he needed to do to win the round. Fine, no problem. The second round, the thing that frustrates me about Ryan Spann was just fully on show in this round. He has the power with odd angled shots to decimate bones in people's face. Like that left hook almost certainly broke an orbital in Anthony Smith's face, but he just did absolutely nothing to set it up, right? Just nothing. There was just a 1-2 and nothing else. There was no footwork. There was no feints. There was no head movement, really. There was not one attempt to throw a shot to the body. There was no leg kicks. There was no feinting of any takedowns. There was nothing. It was 1-2 and maybe a hook in the pocket if it's available, and absolutely jack shit else. And so Anthony Smith takes this absolutely massive shot, curls up on the floor in his guard, and Ryan Spann just beats his forearms. Just the worst fight IQ you can possibly think of. Anthony Smith's ribs are available, his liver's available, his kidneys are available, and you're just hitting his forearms. And you're not looking to strip a post. You're not looking to take a wrist and pull it away and land an elbow over the top. You're literally just throwing bones at forearms. And all I wanted is just, I've written here, Ryan Spann spamming a 1-2 to drop Anthony Smith is so fucking annoying. Just go to the body, right?
It was like someone playing the UFC 4 game that didn't know how to play, and they just figured out how to throw a jab and a right straight, and that was it.
Right. And like after Anthony Smith managed to survive, and again, credit to him and credit to his toughness, Spann just needed to land once. Just one. Smith's eye was so fucked that all it would have needed is one clean shot and he would have dropped, and then you have another opportunity to finish the fight. And it just doesn't happen. Anthony Smith gets a shot of adrenaline, finishes the second round really strongly, just seems to bite down on the mouthpiece and think, well, fuck it. If I'm going out, I'm going out. Has a really nice teep, really nice low inside kick, pushes Spann away when he doesn't like it. Outlanded Spann in that last 30 seconds of the second round. And then the third round, I scored it to Anthony Smith because I just think he just did more in that last 2.5 minutes. And that's Ryan Spann in a nutshell. Finds a way to lose fights. Found a way to lose the Johnny Walker fight. Finds ways to lose fights. And it's just so frustrating when you see a man of his physical capability, you see his ability to hurt and damage opponents, and then he just throws fights away. It's awful. Like,
do you reckon it's a mental block that's holding him back, Harry, or what do you think it is with Ryan Spann that has stopped him?
You know, Ryan Spann was traveling like fucking 6-hour journeys just to go train, moved his entire family down south to Texas just to train. And then this is the result. Like, it has to be a mental thing, because clearly the dedication is there. He's moved his entire fucking life down to a new part of a country to go train at a gym that he thinks is going to facilitate growth in him. And then we get to the point and he drops the ball. Like, I don't think it's anything to do with his preparation or his coaches or his game plan even necessarily. I just think it's when those lights turn on, something changes and he just can't pull the trigger and he can't do the things that I'm sure he does in sparring. And man, for him, that must be incredibly frustrating. For his coaches, it must be insanely frustrating. And just on the point of the co-main event thing, and we'll get there, I just want to throw this out. I wonder whether prior to this fight, Anthony Smith had told the UFC that he was going to hang it up. And I wonder whether this was the UFC with a little layup of, okay, here's a co-main event slot and you can do, like, we'll have a double retirement type thing. Obviously, he didn't retire. But I wonder whether that was a wrinkle here. I don't know.
Because he didn't. I don't give a shit what the circumstances are. If you can the day before a fight change up co-main events and main events like UFC have in the past, you can, no matter what the situation is. I mean, Robbie Lawler, he retired. There's fighters that have retired on undercards before. You know, you can give a guy his moment no matter what placement that you are in the card. You know, it doesn't matter to me anyway. And I don't know fuck all about maybe production and stuff like that, but I mean, you're leaving yourself open for criticism. When we spoke about this, the fight was what it was, and now we have this conversation right now where we're saying, yeah, it definitely should, because what it does, not alone, all right, it to me, what it does is it diminishes the kind of star power of Erin Blanchfield, or diminishes the kind of importance of the fight and her development. I mean, we're talking about a woman in Erin Blanchfield. No, I'm getting way too hard on myself or far myself here, but we're talking about a woman here in Erin Blanchfield that has the chance to become the youngest female champion in UFC history, and you're just fucking putting her on a throwaway card here in Singapore. It annoyed me before. It annoys me even more after we saw this co-main event, because you and I were kind of foreseen what this co-main event was going to be before it happened, and we were kind of proven right. Like, who next for fucking Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann? Who cares? That's what I say. Who cares? Moving on to Chikadze and Caceres in the featherweight division. You're after getting me fired up here, Harry, talking about Erin Blanchfield. But I mean, not to disparage maybe your opinion on Anthony Smith or Ryan Spann. Do you want to talk about what's next, or would you like to go on?
I would like Anthony Smith to call it a day. I think he's done enough in the sport. You know, he sort of said it himself afterwards in his interview, 50 fights deep and I'm still hanging with these guys. That's not a good thing, dude. Like, you don't want to be hanging with these guys. Ryan Spann is a fight that you won handy a couple of years ago, and you almost were finished pretty brutally. You took a big old shot. You've almost certainly got some damage that you're going to need to heal up, and you've got something to go after. You know, Ryan Spann, forget it. Cut him. It's done. Like,
yeah, we've given that man enough chances on this platform. And that was it, like, for me. And plus, Anthony Smith is after getting up in Alex Behea's feelings as well. Alex Behea talking shit about him. That's not a man you want angry at you either, especially Anthony Smith at his stage of his career. So interesting to see what happens with those two, or maybe not interested to see what happens in those two, whatever your opinion is. We shall move on to Giga Chikadze, who came back after a long layoff in the featherweight division to take on Bruce Leroy. Alex Caceres. Fight went to the decision. Giga Chikadze took home the decision. In a fight that Alex Caceres nearly impressed me more in this fight than Giga Chikadze did, because even more so after the fact that the news came out that he broke his arm in round 1 after taking a kick, and that kind of took so much from his probably game plan here, Harry, in trying to maybe mix up some grappling to kind of keep Giga guessing, but somehow made this fight competitive through three rounds, although it was not enough to get the decision. Giga Chikadze came back and did not look himself in there, looked a shadow of his former self in there. You know, you're not expecting anyone to come back and produce the level of performances that he was, but this seemed to me like a big decline from the last fighter that we seen in there in Giga Chikadze when he took on Calvin Kattar. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm in two minds. I don't really want to say what I wrote down, right, for round 1, because I wrote one single line, because what I saw, I'll go through it. So
I think you should. Let's fucking, we're after laying it out there already, Harry. It's not now is not the time to stop.
The line that I wrote is, this is a well-matched fight and Giga Chikadze is not the same fighter. That was my line for round 1, right? Now, as
that
we
move, my exact thoughts too. It was my exact thoughts as well watching.
As we move through the fight, Giga certainly warmed up, certainly found a bit more of his range. The kicks, obviously, super impactful, really dangerous kicks. But I felt like the thing that I was battling with when I was watching the fight is, we have seen Alex Caceres be the same level of awkward with lots and lots of other fighters. Sometimes it works amazingly well. Sometimes it gets him caught. Now, that's not to play down the progression of Alex Caceres, because I think he's found a really interesting balance between being a conventional fighter and then mixing in the weirdness. And that was rubber stamped by that spinning back fist that he landed in this fight, right? Couple of jabs, cuts an angle, all conventional, lovely stuff, and then throws in this spinning back fist from a weird angle, catches Giga Chikadze clean. Lovely, great stuff. I also question whether Giga Chikadze took an injury in that fight too. He was holding his right hand in a very strange posture from round 2 onwards. Now, he still threw it, but he was throwing it sort of in a weird angle, and he wasn't rolling his knuckles over, he wasn't pointing his elbow out. He was either just throwing it like a clubbing hook or like a piston straight open palm. A straight closed fist. And so I wondered whether he took an injury there. And so I'm not going to draw a line under him or say that there's a new ceiling to him or say that there's a new floor to him until I see him again. But there were certainly questions that were raised in this fight about how much damage he took, how he was never quite able to find his range. The output wasn't quite the same. I didn't really get the same tenacity or intensity from him. Caceres was in there smiling the whole time. And okay, I know that he took a few shots and whatever, but the best part of the whole fight was the last 15 seconds where both of them were like, fuck me, this is a close fight. I need to go out and do something. And then Giga Chikadze throws a rolling thunder at the end. Fine, sign me up. I'm cool with all of that stuff. But yeah, I think we have to be very careful if we're the Giga Chikadze camp about who we choose next.
100%. And I think our true definition of where Giga Chikadze is at in his career and as a fighter, he probably will come with that next one too. Because, the time off is an excuse right now, but didn't look the same, but his body didn't even look the same. His demeanor, his posture, it was like a different guy in there. It was worrying. And if he's put in there, like you said, against somebody that's going to be able to take advantage of that, that's not going to be That's not going to be good news for Giga Chikadze. And while we're on the topic of what's next, what would you like to see next for Giga?
Josh Emmett.
Yeah, that's fair. And Caceres?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Paul Hughes.
Paul Hughes, let's do it. Sign me up.
Let's do it, yeah.
That, if they do that, they won't do that. But if they do that, that is an unbelievable debut for Paul Hughes, because Caceres will happily grapple and he'll happily strike. And so it allows Paul Hughes to show off all of his capabilities. Now, that it could be a real banana skin, right? Because we've seen Alex Caceres go in and be awkward and make fights awkward and have close fights. That's not what you want on UFC debut if you're Paul Hughes. You want to go in there and you want to fucking rubber stamp someone through the floor. But if he goes out and looks unbelievable against Alex Caceres, immediately that's like to me, if I'm matching Paul Hughes, you fight Andre Fili first, or you fight somebody like that, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like Caceres, I think he goes in and beats Caceres, but it's an extra added intricacy when you're not going to make your UFC debut and be fighting top 15 level guys straight away. But I'm just gonna, it's kind of like a joke here now. I'll mention Paul Hughes no matter what 145 or give him Giga Chikadze and Alex Caceres on the same night. Paul Hughes, that's the UFC debut to remember. A performance to remember was Rinya Nakamura, who went out there and absolutely put on a clinic against Fern Garcia. I mean, this was like we waxed lyrical, Harry, about Nakamura on the preview show, and he went out there and he delivered. He showcased the level of ability on the feet and on the mat as well. And it was an impressive performance. Obviously, it didn't get the finish, but was as dominant could be in getting the win by unanimous decision. Were you impressed with what level of skill set he showed in there on Saturday?
Very, 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 very impressed. Yeah. I think that you can tell he's not been MMA in MMA a while, because the way that he grapples, like his entrances, his level changes, his takedowns are extremely sport grappling. And I mean like sport wrestling, right? Like Olympic wrestling. The way he level changes, the speed with which he level changes, the way he picks up a single leg, etc., etc., etc. Equally, when he's looking at pin positions, I'll start with the bad stuff first, or not the bad stuff, but the stuff to improve on. He's just a little bit too erratic in those situations. I think he's expecting, and he's so used to grappling with elite level wrestlers, that they move better. Their reactions are better. And so he's primed at all times to immediately transition to better positions and immediately do these things that guys like Fernando Garcia are just not going to give you, right? The reactions are just not the same. They're not the same level of athletic explosion. They're not the same level of technical awareness. And equally, Fernando Garcia is thinking about jiu-jitsu, and Rinya Nakamura is thinking about wrestling, right? Now, I really like that he camped in north-south. He was looking for north-south chokes. He was looking for crucifixes. He was looking for armbars. He was looking for kimuras. He was doing a really good job of dominating the north-south position. The problem with north-south in MMA is that your ability to land damage is almost zero. If we were in Pride rules and we could land grounded knees, north-south is an absolutely unbelievable position to be in. But we can't land grounded knees. And so I would like to see him start to settle more into side controls, more into half guards, more into back controls, more into mounts, and use those to land the damage. I was impressed with his work on the feet. As always, when you get really dominant wrestlers, they seem to adopt kicking games really, really, really easily. Why? Because they're not worried about getting taken down, like, especially not somebody of the grappling level of Rinya Nakamura. He's like, sure, grab a kick, see what happens, right? See what fucking happens. And so the thing I would like to see him work on a little bit more is a little bit of head movement on the way in, a little bit of movement with his head when he's throwing shots. He didn't do a great job of slipping shots. He didn't do a great job of using jabs to set up kicks or using jabs after kicks or whatever it was. I would like to see him develop, as I say, a jab, and I'd like to see him develop a little bit more tightness with the striking. But man, for a UFC debut as a 28-year-old, we've got one here. We've absolutely got one. It might be that the skill development he needs to go and really, really push to the top of bantamweight is going to be lacking. but he's going to be ranked at bantamweight very quickly, and he's going to be ranked for his UFC career. He is a very, very, very interesting fighter, a very, very interesting prospect. And, we've not even talked about the fight really, but yeah, he is, he's something for sure.
Yeah, you talked about some of the negatives there. There was a lot of positives in kind of the levels of grappling that he showed when he did get the fight down, how quickly he was to transition in between different positions, how he reacted in certain ways, almost got a finish on occasion as well. Garcia proved to be a tough customer in there, but that's about as good as performance as you can expect without getting a finish in a fight. And what was the major point or takeaway from the level of skill set he did show in there? Was it what he showed on the feet? Was it what he showed in the grappling? And what do you feel is his best attribute to kind of get him into the top 15 at the bantamweight division and stay there?
I mean, I think one of the things that impressed me the most is how he didn't shoot takedowns just because he's a better grappler. He set the takedowns up, right? A number of them, there's fucking loads of things that impressed me. But one of the things that impressed me was he would set the takedown up. In the second round specifically, when he set the takedown up, he throws a low kick. Fanny Garcia steps off, loses his balance a little bit, and then he's like, "Oh, sure, I'll take you down now because you're off balance. You're not on the center line."
Yeah, very opportunistic kind of.
Well, it's that he knows and he's understood, and it seems like he set himself a goal that it'd be too easy to just go in and take these lads down as and whenever he wants. Instead, he wants to treat this like Fanny Garcia is better than he is. And he's going in and he's saying, okay, I'm going to wait until the correct moment presents itself. And I'm going to try and create these correct moments rather than just level changing as fast as he can, which is pretty fucking fast, by the way, shooting a double and then putting his man on the mat. That was one impressive thing. The other impressive thing was he only needed one takedown a round. That's impressive. I don't like this Merab Dvalishvili. Oh, he lands 373 takedowns in a fight. Great. That means nothing to me. That just means he's really good at picking somebody up and putting them back down again. It doesn't tell me anything about his level of control on the ground. Nakamura, the body lock passing, the half guard passing, the north-south stapling, it's just the way he uses the cradle, the front cradle, the way he limits the hips and side control when people are getting up, like his eventual back control. Some of it was just absolutely gorgeous to watch. The way he finished the single leg in the first round was fan-fucking-tastic. Like, that's an elite level wrestler we're looking at right there, melding it into MMA. And so just the ability for him to start to see through the lines, that was probably the most impressive. But you asked what skill set does he need to really, really improve on to get himself to the elite level. I think it's just the tightness of his striking, not necessarily the shot selection, not necessarily like form or how he's throwing it, but the tightness with which his striking game actually has. He's a little bit too loose when he's offensive and a little bit too loose defensively as well. And so if we tighten up that upper body striking, yeah, we've got an interesting one for sure.
Damon Blackshear next for Nakamura.
Yeah, sign me up.
Like that one?
Sign me up.
I mean, that might be unfortunate for Blackshear, but I think that's a good test for both guys. Blackshear got his shine with the twister, obviously performed very well against Batista, didn't get the win. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that. It'd be a relevant name that would be outside the top 15 as well for Nakamura. And we spoke about this on the preview show. We don't have time to be messing around here with Nakamura. He's up there in 31, 32 now at this stage, and 28. Okay, well then we have a little bit more time than what I thought we had. But still, we want to get him up there. We want to get him in the mix.
Why don't we do Mario Bautista? The reason why I say that is Damon Blackshear obviously coming off a loss. He performed very well. I wonder whether we give Damon Blackshear a reward for taking that Mario Bautista fight on short notice, and a reward is not Rinya Nakamura.
No, definitely not. But then you could look at, if you want to reward someone, we had Mario Bautista that did nothing wrong, that was supposed to fight Cody Garbrandt, and which would have propelled him up the division, and he too chose to fight down, and it almost cost him too. So maybe he's not willing to fight down again and wanting to, because Nakamura is a very good chance, and you don't want to be fighting a 7-8-0 guy that has a good chance of beating you if you're after working as hard as Batista has to kind of garner the position he's in within the bantamweight division. So do you know what? I don't hate it, but I would feel just as bad as I would for Damon Blackshear as I would for Batista for trying to throw either one of those guys in with a guy like Nakamura. But someone is going to have to be unlucky next. Someone's going to be waiting in the wings, and be interesting to see who it is for Rinne Nakamura. But this guy is the truth. He's going to be there, like Harry said, up in that 135-pound division for a good couple of years to come. As will the next two ladies that we're going to talk about. That is Erin Blanchfield and Talia Santos, who fought in the unofficial co-main event of the evening in what was a interesting fight, I have to say. What way can I break this down? Okay. I am very impressed with Erin Blanchfield, even though it probably wasn't the most pleasing performance from her on the eye. But what she did was she overcame quite a bit of adversity from round one, and she had to answer a lot of questions after round one. And you know what really impressed me is she came out and she found a way to get it done in rounds 2 and rounds 3. Super close fight, but I ain't going to argue at the decision. It was unanimous. All 3 judges scored it for Erin Blanchfield, and in my opinion, rightly so. Round 1, Santos. Round 2 and rounds 3 for Blanchfield. And I thought, it was not looking good for Erin Blanchfield early days in round 1. I thought, oh man, someone has her number here. Talia Santos was stopping all the takedowns. She was landing heavy shots on the feet. She was keeping Erin Blanchfield off her. Blanchfield looked like a rabbit in headlights at certain times, not being able to figure out the speed and the ferocity that Talia Santos was bringing towards her in round 1. But she did. She found it. Let's talk about round 1 first. I think this is one that we'll break down round by round. You're nodding your head, you're agreeing a lot. You kind of probably have the same sentiments as myself for round 1, Harry.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, as much as we laud Erin Blanchfield, and rightly so, in the Severe Spotlight I wrote about, I think I've written 2 now about Blanchfield, but in both of them, or at least one of them, I can't remember, I've mentioned that as much as there is an upside to her grappling and her toughness and her ability to adhere to a game plan, there is work that needs to be done, right? Now, she may win a title before that work is complete. Who knows, right? But the offensive movements of her striking need so much work. And what I mean by that is when you watch her strike, she looks like she's hitting pads or a bag. Or she looks
very
like
robotic, isn't it?
Looks like she's drilling with a partner that isn't giving her reactions they would give live. And then Talia Santos was just not even performing wonderfully, wasn't excelling. She was winging shots, really. But as you mentioned, I think you summed it up beautifully, is the ferocity, the intensity, and the power of Talia Santos just had Erin Blanchfield all over the shop. Erin Blanchfield couldn't get her kicking range. Talia Santos just immediately closed the distance with massive right hands. Erin Blanchfield couldn't get the fight down. She couldn't close the distance without getting hit. The knees and the elbows on the clinches. Just Talia Santos beat the brakes off of Erin Blanchfield. She beat her everywhere in this first round. And Erin Blanchfield walked back to her corner looking like she just walked out of a car crash in that first round. Nose bloody, eye swollen, dumbfounded. Just wasn't sure what she just fucking witnessed. Like, now, she
was like Chris Tucker in Rush Hour On. She was like, which one of y'all hit me? You know what I mean? She didn't know where these shots were coming from. It was crazy. But right. I know I'm going to set you up for what we've seen in rounds 2 and rounds 3, but she did get back to her corner. She did have the conversation with her coaches, and, they settled her down. They told her what she needs to do. And that was to not fucking play the game of Talia Santos, really, wasn't it? Not? It was to, let's not fight Talia Santos's fight here. Let's fight Erin Blanchfield's fight. And that's exactly what she went out and she did in rounds 2 and rounds 3.
Man, the difference, right? And this, to me, this shows why some fighters don't need star-studded corners. They just need a really, really solid relationship with their corners. They need to trust their corners. Because when you go into your corner after a round like that, you're looking for answers, right? Like, you're looking for, lads, give me something here that's going to change the course of this fight, because I've just taken a fucking beating for 5 minutes. And the coaches know that we're going to calm you down. We're going to bring the breathing down. We're going to slow the mind down a little bit. And then there's 2 or 3 bits of information that we're going to give you. And that's you. Off we go. And she changed immediately. Within the first 10 seconds, she pushed Talia Santos up against the fence. And that was the round, right? Now, Talia Santos made a mistake. Erin Blanchfield had Talia Santos had double unders and was trying to I've forgotten the Japanese term for it, but she was basically trying to hip throw her over with double unders using a foot to trip. Now, I couldn't see specifically what she was doing with her feet because the camera angle had gotten the cage wall where her feet was, but either Erin Blanchfield had some fancy footwork and misdirected away from the Kazushi, or Talia Santos just slipped or something happened and she pulled Erin Blanchfield on top of her with double unders. And oh man, like, if there's one place you do not want to be in an MMA fight, it's having pulled Erin Blanchfield on top of you. Like,
and that could have cost her the fight, that movement 100%. There when she did, yeah, because it was, even though Erin Blanchfield was fighting her fight, it was still relatively close. But the minute Blanchfield landed on top and was able to kind of stay there as well, cost her the second round, in my opinion. It's like, sometimes, you know, it's very hard for us, and we'll criticize mistakes like that. She simply should have just separated there, and that's it. Sometimes the easiest solution is the best solution. Never mind trying to kind of suplex and end up in side control or whatnot. Like, why are you even initiating in a move like that when you don't want to go to ground with someone that you know is as good as what they are? Now, maybe that came from the confidence that she had in the first round for being able to stop the takedowns, and that kind of cost her in the long run. But ultimately, like you said, Blanchfield ended up on top and finished the round strong, took the round in my book. And it was similar enough story in round 3. We saw Talia Santos kind of slowing down a little bit more, obviously, because she's a very explosive movement type of fighter. That does kind of won in her fights a little bit. And yeah, that was there to be seen. And Erin Blanchfield kind of took advantage of that in round 3 a little bit too.
Right. I mean, I think, like you say, in round 2, the end of round 2, the attempted takedown from Talia Santos was possibly a little bit of John Jones ego there, where it's it breaks off you in the first round. Now I'm gonna beat you on the ground, right? I know this is where you're good and stuff, and so I'll take you there and I'll put you there, and we can have a swim here and see who drowns. And obviously, it didn't go well for her, and that's unfortunate. But in the third round, I actually think what Erin Blanchfield showed is the game plan she should be employing for 5-round fights. Because, okay, you don't want to just allow someone to tire themselves out on your face for 5 minutes and then tire them out, pushing them up against the cage and stuff. But by the midway through the third, Talia Santos was fucked, like. And Erin Blanchfield,
I had said, I tweeted out that I kind of wish that this was a 5-round fight, and it would have, the way it was kind of progressive, it would have definitely suited Erin Blanchfield. It's like another kind of thought that I have from time to time, where I feel number 1 contendership fights should be, I think we should label them before they happen. UFC obviously don't like to do that. But you should at least be having fights like this, I feel, at 5 rounds as well, just if it's going to be a title eliminator. But I'm talking about stuff that doesn't happen. What did happen, it was 3 rounds. Erin Blanchfield was coming strong, and you were just going to talk about how strong she finished.
Yeah, like, she comes on and she's getting the better of the striking, because Talia Santos is whiffing more on shots. They're slower than they were. Her footwork isn't quite as perfect as it was in the first round. Her base wasn't quite as perfect underneath there. And Erin Blanchfield's walking forward, landing shots, marauding on her, swarming on her with her shots. And look, if I look at, let's say, an Alexa Grasso, who's obviously a real crisp boxer, can do some of the grappling for sure, but certainly that's not her strong suit. I mean, I'm looking at Erin Blanchfield and I'm saying, well, let me push her up against the fence for 3 rounds And after that, let's see what the striking's looking like. Let's see how tired she is after defending and her arms are full of lactate and I've dropped her down a few times and she's had to get back up and the legs are tired and I've kneed them a little bit. Love a foot stomp from Erin Blanchfield in that second round. And let's see how the toes are feeling. Is she bouncing the same? Like, that's a really interesting prospect. And just to round off, I think I agree entirely with you is this was the type of fight that shows whether you're a champion or not. And it's not because she went out and decimated Talia Santos. It's not because she went out and cleanly dispatched of Talia Santos. It's not because she had a better tactical game plan. She went out and she won. She went
found
out.
a way. She found a way.
She found a fucking way.
Yeah, and that's it. That I couldn't agree more with anything that you said. That was my biggest takeaway here is that, yeah, it's easy to criticize the performance, but it's not the performance that shone through. I felt it was the mentality there that we haven't seen in the past. It was a fighter who had lost round one, who got beat up bad in round one, to be truthful, but went out there and didn't let it. Her and her team did an excellent job in getting the job done there. Do we do the title shot? Do we do the winner of Grasso and Shevchenko? I think it's time. Look, even if we think she's ready or she's not ready, there's only one way you find out, and that's you put her in there. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, she's 25 years of age. She'll be back again. And if that doesn't work out, she'll probably be back again and again. But like I said about Machado, Gary, be very, very surprised if I didn't see Erin Blanchfield with a title around her waist before her UFC career is all said and done. And I really look forward to seeing her progression, and I look forward to seeing how she kind of deals with the challenge of the title shot, if that is to come from her next. Harry, we'll move on 1 hour in. Let's blast through the rest of these fights. Junior Tafa took out Parker Porter inside 1 round. Parker Porter is not going to be sending the Tafa family any Christmas cards this year. Bad times, both occasions he went in there. Yeah, I mean, not too much to discuss about this one, Harry. Your thoughts?
I thought the most interesting part of the fight is how high Junior Tafa was wearing his shorts. That was an interesting wrinkle to the fight. But fair play to Tafa. He immediately found the right hook counter. Sorry, I've derailed the podcast now, haven't I?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, literally my first comment is high-waisted Tafa ?
Going in there with those shorts on, like Alexander Usyk as well. It was a weekend for highly placed shorts.
Indeed. He found the overhand right early, right from the Parker Porter left hook, and just landed it nicely. Landed a really nice knee, caused Parker Porter some problems, reversed away a cage clinch, and then slammed an elbow in, and we were almost done. Pretty clean, pretty clinical work from Junior Tafa. That's it, really. Let's put him in against fucking Waldo Cortes-Acosta. No problem.
Speaking of Waldo Cortes-Acosta, went out there and absolutely ended what's his name? Lucas Brzeski in that was a pretty kind of horrific, kind of vicious, violent knockout that Cortes-Acosta was able to kind of achieve in this fight, Harry.
Yeah, so as I started watching this, I called naked low kick gets counted ? Because that's all Lucas Brzeski was throwing was that right low kick, and Cortes-Acosta was just absolutely winging bowling ball right hands at him. It wasn't, unfortunately, a naked low kick counter. It wasn't far off, but I mean, just a horrendous fight from both of them, frankly. Cortes-Acosta knows he has massive power and doesn't give a shit about throwing it properly, just bowling balls right hands at people. And Brzeski, I think, immediately out the gate realized that he was not going to be able to hit this guy hard enough to get respect. And that's why he was just pickpocketing little low kicks at him and not wanting to get in a real firefight. And when you're doing that against a guy like Cortes-Acosta, he's just going to walk you down and absolutely fucking destroy you. So, yeah, 2 heavyweight fights. You know, we got the first round finishes we wanted. Fair play.
We would have been, we're after giving out enough on this podcast, and we surely would have been giving out a hell of a lot more if that had went any longer than expected. Look at you, moving on to the next one, bantamweight division again. Garrett Armfield took out Toshimi Kazama, straight right hand inside the first round. You had asked Harry about Garrett Armfield. You were wondering if this was going to be a fight that was going to showcase his abilities. And it was, and he showcased his abilities quite well, didn't he?
It really does, yeah. I've made one really high praise note, and that's just how clean the 1-2 was looking last night. But the other was that he steps in on everything, right? And Kazama just can't find the uppercut. He's really looking for it. He's really trying to search for it. But Armfield's speed and how quickly he crowds with that 1-2 when he steps in, it was just caused him a huge problem. The left eye of Kazama was a real problem immediately when those 1-2s were landing. And I really enjoyed how Armfield worked the body after he knew that he could touch the head and he knew that he'd hurt Kazama to the head, just started banging away at the body to bring the hands down. And then, man, just
ferocious.
Big right hand, big right hand, and fair play to Garrett Armfield. Like it's a really clean finish from moment one. You could see immediately how that fight was going to progress. Beats him with speed, beats him with precision, beats him with straight shots, goes to the body, and then cleans him out up top. Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff.
Where do you think Armfield fits in the 135-pound division?
Who fucking knows where anyone fits in the 135-pound division?
It's insane, the talent that's coming out there at the minute.
Ridiculous. You're going to have guys in the outside 15 that are elite level fighters that just can't make it. Like, I mean, that's an overstretch, but there are going to be seriously skilled fighters that just can't make it into a ranking because of how stacked that division is. Unbelievable division.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Moving on to the middleweight division, Michael Oleksiejczuck took out Chidi Njokuani in what was pretty much a war. Two of these boys threw down. This was insane. It's insane. Yeah. And durability was the thing that shone through in this fight more so than anything else. It's been a hot topic of conversation over the last little while, and Sean is pretty high on durability being a very strong component in someone being successful in mixed martial arts. And Oleksiejczuck, he showed quite a good bit of durability in a fight that he could have been finished, but came back super strong and went on to finish Chidi Njokuani. Your thoughts, please, Harry?
So durability, I agree with Sean. It's a big factor, but I also think Oleksiejczuck did a way better job of defending shots here. Like a lot of the shots that obviously Chidi Njokuani threw 348,000 knees inside 5 minutes. But a lot of them, Oleksiejczuck was double arm posting, right? So he wasn't taking them to the gut. Obviously, he took a good few to the gut, and he certainly took a ton of damage. But he was doing a good job of rolling with shots. He was taking big blows on the forearms when they were out in open space. He took a lot of body kicks, but in sparring, you prefer to take a body kick than a head kick a lot of the time. And so, absolutely, Oleksiejczuck was in the fight, in the fire, very durable. But I think he just did a way better job of being defensively sound than Chidi Njokuani did. Njokuani just took shots mid-combination and just kept going. Like, I think it certainly felt like Njokuani was absolutely adamant that he was going to get him out there in a round. Didn't. Instead, found himself on the end of an Oleksiejczuck momentum shift. But I was impressed with how aware Oleksiejczuck was of the moments, how they were happening. He didn't let himself get carried away by the chaos, and equally how defensively sound he was in some of those positions. Because if he wasn't, we probably are looking at a Chidi Njokuani round one finish. But his ability to roll with the shots, his ability to cover up in the right times, in the right angles, and then fire off counters was very impressive. Very impressive.
Absolutely, it was. Anyone that you'd like to see Michael in there with next?
It's middleweight. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, who gives a fuck is right. Yeah, spot on. Bo Nickel. Let's put him in there. Let's match
Paul Hughes.
all the feather. Yeah, Paul Hughes. Let's match all the middleweights going forward with Bo Nickel and all the featherweights with Paul Hughes. Yeah. Song and Bedoya next. Song Kenan went out there and what would appear to pick up his second win in a row, if you were to go by the video highlights of him knocking out Ian Gary. Stop the lights. Picked up a unanimous decision win against Ronaldo Bedoya. The arm of death has been cast upon the screen here, Harry. You don't sound too interested in talking about this one.
Bedoya just isn't a UFC caliber athlete to me.
One of many.
He's very tough, very tough. Happy to stand in the fire, happy to trade, but just isn't skillful enough, really. And that's not any knock on Song Kenan. I think he's a good fighter. But it just felt too easy of a win. Like Bedoya was just, it's one of those where it looks competitive, but it's not, you know? Yeah. Song Kenan, I don't think was not in any real danger here.
Bedoya, Song Kenan was a guy who came in here that got knocked out and beat up pretty damn badly against Ian Gary in these last fights. So, he dropped hard. Yeah. That's what the UFC will try to tell us. Like, I mean, I can understand Song kind of maybe not going full blast for the finish, or maybe not having the confidence, or maybe having a little bit of PTSD after getting that knockout in the last fight. You know, that happens. But Bedoya was a guy that was there for the taking for sure. I definitely agree with you, and he didn't manage to do it. Look, there won't be whoever fight for Song Kenan next is whatever fight that happens. You know, we talked about guys being UFC caliber, Harry, and I think we can say it about your guy, Billy Goff, who the severe spotlight shone on this weekend. He is certainly UFC caliber, and he showcased a lot of great abilities when he went on. The body punch and ground punches in round one, another first round finish here, and he took out Yusaku Kinoshita very, very impressively. And I know that you're impressed, as we did get the spotlight shone on him. Please wax lyrical as to why you chose Billy Goff as your spotlight this week.
So I was very, very tempted to pick Nakamura. I was very tempted to pick Erin Blanchfield, but having written about Erin Blanchfield, and I'm almost certainly going to write about Nakamura again, I picked Billy Goff mostly because this is Matt Brown in another human's body. Like, that's what we're looking at. Billy Goff
that's unbelievable.
Brilliant. That's what he is. And like, how could I fuck it? Like, we're going to have Billy Goff is not winning any titles. Billy Goff is not getting a single digit rank next to his name, but fuck me, we're going to have some fun with this fella. Like, Kinoshita came in here and was absolutely adamant that he was either getting finished in the first round or finishing someone in the first round. And Goff did such a good job of keeping calm in the chaos. He had to take his licks to make his reads, but when he made the reads, he realized that the body was open. Everything ended with a low kick, and those low kicks started to add up. Kinoshita started to slow in his movement, started to sit down on his shots, started to be more available to be hit. And when Billy Goff realized that that body shot was available on the slip right hand, fuck me, did he capitalize on it. Like, I love a body shot finish as much as the next person. And it was one of those where the Simpsons would show it in slow motion, you know, like 100% they'd show it in slow motion. And I was just really impressed with how UFC debut a year after your contenders win. You're flown out to Singapore on some card that's about the Korean Zombie. You're fighting a local region guy in front of his fans, and you go out and you take a licking and you manage to bring it back inside a round, figuring out the reads and dispatching of him like that. That's a smart fighter. Matt Brown, stand up. No problem.
Let's go. Out goes Matt Brown. In comes Billy Goff. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Who match him up next? Song Kenan?
Ooh, yeah, I like that. Same time.
Same
like
time
that.
frame. Let's do it. Easy.
Yeah.
It's easy. They'll be making that in the war room tomorrow for sure. JJ Aldrich went out there, Harry, and did what she did best. She took home no, she didn't take home a decision. I mean, she
Finished
does do finish. She picked up a nice finish in round 2 over Liang Na, and yeah, quite impressive performance here from JJ.
Career best, I think. One of her career best performances. Like, okay, you don't want to get taken down with a head and arm throw a couple of times, but the third time she made Liang Na pay. And as always, we know what we're getting from JJ Aldrich. Like, on the feet, we know what we're getting. Clean, crisp 1-2s, good head movement, bangs a little bit, smacked up Liang Na a little bit on the feet, but it was the progression on the ground that was really impressive, right?
Yeah, that was where her weakness was in previous fights as well. Always solid, very kind of technically put together on the feet, but you know, it was always susceptible for a takedown, getting dominated and kind of out-strengthed and out-techniqued on the mat whenever the fight did go there. Not on Saturday night though.
Nope. Gets the fight down in that second round, manages to slide right into a really nice side control, works herself into a side control out of what could have been an armbar situation, smushes the crossface pressure, works herself an underhook, gets herself to mount, and then just starts absolutely going hell for leather. She did exactly what I've been asking for such a long time. When you get to mount, force your opponent to start giving their back. And when they give their back, you shove their hips through the bottom of their spine and start landing massive blows. And that's exactly what she did. And that's how you use back mount in MMA. Wonderful finish from JJ Aldrich. Really, really happy to see her pick up a win, especially in the dominant fashion that she did. And the fight is Casey O'Neill. Thank you very much.
Woo, King Casey. That is a very interesting fight. I'd be all here for it. Moving on to the next one, which was the opening fight of any quick thoughts here on Sungwoo Choi, who took out Jarno Errens by unanimous decision. It got us kicked off in the 145-pound division, Harry.
Really, really fun fight. Really, really fun fight. Striking battle.
Gets going.
Absolutely striking battle for the most part. Errens drops Choi. Big right uppercut through the guard disguised as a hook. Very, very nice. One kick checked by Errens brought up a deep cut on the shin of Choi. That affected some of the standing. Round 2, I have Choi needs to work here if he wants to win this round. There's 143 left. Chest to chest half does some nice passing from Choi. Good ground control, and the ground and pound is fine, but there's not enough volume and for sure not enough damage. Round 3 was a big round needed for Choi. Starts off with some leg kicks. If I was him, I'd take the fight down again. Looks good on top. Errens was looking for the same uppercut in round 2. Choi on top after dropping Errens with leg kicks. Beautiful leg kicks. But I've just said, why the fuck have you gone down to meet him on the ground? He has no legs. Make him stand. However, you know, he won the fight. Fair play to him. But yeah, horrendous fight IQ from Choi in the third round. But, you know, we move.
You're going to get that in a UFC main or card opener. A few mistakes, not best fight IQ, but as Harry said, fight was entertaining, and Woo Choi got the win over the Dutchman Jarno Errens. That wraps us up. Performance bonuses on the night fight of the night. Obviously, Max Holloway against Korean Zombie picked up 50 each. Junior Tafa picked up a performance of the night for his knockout over Parker Porter, and Michael Oleksiejczuck picked up another.
Porker, he's gone and done it, lads. He's gone and done it, lads. He's done a Harry Powell. Look at him. What a man.
You got cut with that too. That is hilarious that happened there. But
and Parker Porker, fuck
Parker Porker. Me probably saying what I'm thinking there, but how's it ever? No offense, Parker. Don't come after me. And as I said, all of the performance bonuses went to all of those gentlemen. Parker Porter never got anything for him, or he's not going to be winning any bodybuilding prizes either down the line. Harry, as we do each and every week, you'll give us a quick outro with some of your outgoing thoughts on this card, please, sir.
Sure. I mean, again, on paper a card that, okay, we had a few discrepancies with, but overall was on the night a really, really good card. Like, again, if you put heavyweights on the card and they finish the fight in the first round, we can't give anything else but praise for that. A really emotional main event for both fighters. Smith and Spann, let's forget about it. It never happened. You know, Giga and Alex, really, really pleased for Alex Caceres, even in a losing performance. He really showed the progression in his game. Nakamura and Garcia, as I say, we've got one with Nakamura, Blanchfield showing us just the last thing that we needed to see in terms of her mentality. Okay, there's some skill deficiencies, but as we said, she's 24 years of age. Man, the rest of it, Armfield again slotting in at 135. A ton of talking points we have there. Oleksiejczuck, middleweight, who gives a fuck. And the first three fights on the card were just really entertaining, really, really, really good fights. And again, we've been delivered a fight card that was on paper maybe not the strongest, but on the night was great fun, really, really good watch. And UFC Paris coming up next week. That's a good card. Okay, we've lost the William Gomis fight. That's a shame, but overall, it's a really, really fun card at a great time for me. Thanks very much, UFC.
Absolutely. Bish bash bosh, that rounds us up for the balance breakdown this week. At BJJ_Harry Powers, where you'll find that man. Go over there and check out Severe Spotlight on SevereMMA.com. You know, at O'Neill MMA is where you'll find me. We will be back for, like Harry said, the UFC Paris preview show a little bit later on in the week. We look forward to speaking about that. Big fights for Caelan Loughran and Rhys McKee on that card. Until then, we will see you. Goodbye, good luck, and look